Hello everybody and welcome to today's IEP Live Learn Lunch. Really excited today to be joined by one of our fellows, Chris Blackwell, who's going to be talking to us about performance and purpose. That's not the title of the webinar, is it at all? It's something slightly different, but I'll hand over to him and he's going to take us through today's session. So over to you, Chris.
Hi everybody, great to be here. And just as I'm starting to speak, there's a fire engine siren going off in the background, so apologies for that. So as Helen said, today's topic is to do with purpose. And actually I'm just going to launch a quick poll to start with. So hopefully, let me know, can you see the poll? So just interested to kind of get people's view. Is there a conflict between purpose and performance, or between purpose and profit? Let's see what people think.
Okay, so we're off to a quick start, so people are going for it. So what we get, that it's changing all the time, Chris. It started with not sure, then we went to no, we're at yes, but they're all kind of, it's kind of even here, isn't it?
It is, it is.
So I can see not sure's taking over now. It was sort of 30-30, 36. Now we're 50% not sure and pretty evenly split between yes and no. So
okay, so I think that was pretty much, I don't know if anybody's not had a chance to do it. So yeah, pretty even split, 50% not sure. So you come to the right place because we're going to talk about it today. About a third think there is, which is great, and about 18% think there isn't. So, because I'm a big fan of conversation. I think conversation is something that we need to have, and it's great to have discussions with people who think different things than what you do. So we're going to come back to this question a little bit in the session. But as Helen said, I'm Chris Blackwell. I am the CEO of a consultancy called Purpose-Led Performance, and we work with organizations to improve their leadership, to improve their performance, and to improve their growth, all through becoming purpose-driven. But I started off life as an employment advisor. So back in the distant past, so 2002, 2003. And so I worked a long time. And Josh is saying he clicked the wrong button. He agrees. So thanks, Josh. I'm going to share a few slides, but we are going to have some breakout discussions today. We're going to have 2 breakout discussions, and I really want to encourage some good discussion and debate in those breakout rooms, but that's coming up. So I'm going to share some slides. So here we go. Purpose in Business and Leadership, that's the title, and why the meaning of life is to be happy and useful. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So what we're going to talk about, I'm going to spend a bit of time just doing a bit of an overview and introduction to me. And then we'll get into the really interesting stuff. So we'll talk about purpose and performance. We'll talk about purpose, personal purpose, and its role in work, both for us as individuals, but also looking at the lens for the job seekers that you support in your day-to-day work. And then also talk about career progression and development as well. My route to leadership was untraditional. So I guess I shared with you that I started life as an employment advisor. I spent 10 years at Ingeus and ended up being the deputy CEO at Ingeus. And then I went to MAXIMUS as their UK managing director, which I did for 3.5 years. And then subsequently, I've been a CEO in the justice sector and a CEO in the education sector. And now these days I sort of run my consulting business. But my journey and my route was a little bit untraditional. So my first job was here, and this is Iceland on Standish Gate in Wigan. And so this is where I started my journey in work, and I was 16. So the same day I started sixth form college, I also got a job in Iceland. I used to work there Thursday evenings, Friday evenings, all day Saturday. They used to stick me in the freezer on a Saturday to count all the stock. Which took me about 4 hours, and by that point I'd kind of lost the feeling all the way up to my knees. But yeah, so that's kind of where I started off, and then from there, the next place I guess on my career journey was I ended up in a Tibetan Buddhist monastery in India. And so my story, fast forward a couple of years, 18, sat in the college library. I should have been revising for my A-levels, but instead I thought I'd just, read some books. I ended up picking the book up on Buddhism. And I read this book and I thought, and this is the mid-90s, kind of like peak Oasis time, you know, I had big, long, floppy hair. And, you know, Wigan, you know, is, there aren't any Buddhist monasteries in Wigan. If those of you don't know Wigan. But yeah, so there I am, 18 years old, I pick up this book and I think, oh shit, I think I'm a Buddhist. So I decided that what I needed to do was go and learn about Buddhism. So I deferred. I was due to go to university. I deferred university, and I found that I could go and teach English in a Tibetan Buddhist monastery. So off I went. I went to Darjeeling in the sort of foothills of the Himalayas, and yeah, I went to find myself. Unfortunately, I didn't find myself. But when I was there, it turns out Tibetan Buddhist monastery wasn't a great place to learn about Buddhism. But when I was there, what I did do is I met a friend, Justin, Australian guy who was a nurse, and he told me this story. So Justin, huge guy, about 6'4", big long hair, crazy eyes, and he was doing volunteer work over there. And he told me this story about being at an event in Australia with the Dalai Lama. And this journalist had been there, and this journalist had sort of young, cocky, upstart journalist, had said, "Mr. Dalai Lama," can't do an Australian accent, so you have to forgive me, but Mr. Dalai Lama, you know, you're reputed to be one of the wisest people in the world. The Tibetan people think you're a living god. Apparently, you've been reborn 14 times. So can you tell me what is the meaning of life? And apparently the Dalai Lama had laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And he said, it's really simple. The meaning of life is to be happy and useful. And so I didn't find myself in India. I didn't learn a great deal about Buddhism in the Tibetan Buddhist monastery, but I did come back with this phrase, the meaning of life is to be happy and useful. And that kind of really resonated with me. And then that became a guide for, I guess, for my life and my career as I sort of went on. So from there, you know, actually the first thing I did when I came back from India is I spent the summer doing door-to-door sales. So you can't really get a bigger contrast from a Tibetan Buddhist monastery and, you know, going around all the various different places in the Northwest, knocking on doors, trying to get people to change their gas supply. So it was, again, mid-90s, they just deregulated the gas market. So I had a bit of direct sales experience. Then went off to university. And at university, I once ventured into the careers library, and it looked just all a bit too hard work. And I thought, it just doesn't feel like I'm on the path to being happy and useful spending my time in the careers library. So after university, I decided I wanted to go on a few more adventures. So I went to Japan, and I taught school I taught English in a junior high school in Japan. So that's not me in the photo, although my hair probably when I was working in Iceland looked quite similar, but that's pretty much indicative of, you know, what my experience was like in Japan. So I had a great time there. And then I came home to the UK, and I thought it's time I got a proper grown-up job. So I was about 25 at the time. And again, I had this mantra ring in my ear, the meaning of life is to be happy and useful. And I saw a job advertised to be an employment advisor. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. That sounds like actually I could be useful. And it sounds like I could be working with people, helping people. And so that's how I got into the employability sector. And that's how I became an employment advisor. And I joined Ingeus. At that point, they were called Work Directions, working in Hammersmith. At that point, it was a private sector-led New Deal program. And that's kind of how I started my sort of career as I was 25. And so Ingeus had just come into the UK. I think we had 40 people in that, 2 offices, one in Hammersmith, one in Great Portland Street in Westminster. And that was the start of my career in employability. And I was kind of very fortunate to land in a great organization. I don't know if anybody on the phone is from Ingeus, but really wonderful organization, very purpose driven. And at a time when the sector was really kind of growing and going through growth. And so, you know, while I was at Ingeus, Ingeus grew and I grew. And actually, you know, Ingeus in those early days, and I think still now, a really great organization promoted from within. So I went from being an employment advisor. I became a contract manager for a while. Then I moved up to Birmingham, which is where I am now, to run a New Deal for Disabled People contract. Then I became ops director. And so, over the first 6.5 years, Ingeus grew from 40 people to 500. And I sort of progressed through all the different roles and ended up as being the deputy CEO and chief operating officer. And so a lot of what I learned about leadership, about business, about performance, and about growth, I kind of learned through those early stages. And I was there for 10 years. And so did the deputy CEO role for 3.5 years. And over that time, we went from 500 people to 1,800. So we went through some pretty spectacular growth. And I would say a lot of that, and a lot of the success was driven by Ingeus being a purpose-driven organization, a for-profit organization, but the way it did business was driven by purpose. So, I have to do that. And that's me now. And it looks like I've airbrushed the grey hairs out, but yeah, not too long ago. So that's just a little bit of an introduction, I guess, to me. And I said from there I went to MAXIMUS back in, it was 2012 as UK Managing Director. At that point when I joined MAXIMUS, they were still relatively small. I think we had about 300 people in the UK. And over the next 3.5 years, we grew to 4,000 people. So yeah, experienced quite a lot of growth at MAXIMUS as well. So that brings us to the first topic, which is purpose and performance. And I should say, at any point through the session, if you've got a question, you've got a view, if you agree with something, you disagree with something, drop it in the chat and we'll try and come back to it. But purpose and performance, and actually before I say anything about this, I want to come back to the question we posed at the beginning. And that question is there a conflict between purpose and performance, or between purpose and profit? So Helen is now going to, hopefully, I'm going to stop sharing and we'll be able to, I'll put this question in the chat. But I think let's have 10 minutes. We're going to be in groups of 3 to 4 and just share your views in your group. Is there a conflict? If you think there is, why? If you think there isn't, why? And I'd just be interested when we come back just to get a bit of feedback about some of those discussions. So I'm going to stop sharing now and hopefully Helen has the group set up. Excellent. Okay, so you should all get a message popping up and we shall see you back here in about 10 minutes. And Andy as well.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, there we go.
We talked a bit about the conflict between having to meet targets and, possibly losing sight of the purpose in all of that, and also being funded by separate bodies and not always having a shared goal with the company or the organisation that they're funding. So my program's funded with DWP and NHS. So obviously they have very different ideas about their purpose, possibly,
Yes.
which might not always match with Ingeus's. So it can, not. If those things are aligned, then all is good. And I think, and Andy was saying that he worked on some ESF funded and BBO programs. So lottery and ESF, obviously goals might be a bit different.
Yeah. So thank you, Kerry. We thought, well, everybody's back now, but Kerry and group came back a little bit early, so we thought we'd get some feedback. I'd be really interested. Use the chat and just tell us what did you, what was a key message from you in your groups in the discussion? Did you think there was a conflict? Kerry talked about sometimes it feels like targets can cause conflicts between, the purpose, and also different commissioners and different organizations having different views. So just use the chat and just kind of let us know what you discussed. So what we've got here. So Emma says, discuss the biggest conflict between performance expectations versus the purpose of helping people. So that sounds like a familiar sort of topic to me. I've worked in the sector for many years. Any others want to share what they sort of discussed? Maybe we'll come back to the chat.
And we can, we could unmute people if anyone wants to just quickly tell us. Nigel has said, how do you consider performance? Is the manner or the outcome? Oh, is it the manner or the outcome?
How do you
So
consider
maybe
this
that's
performance? It's a good one. Carolyn talked about aligning individual purpose, organizational purpose works best, particularly when targets contextualized around the why. Felt that how performance is measured mattered. Pretty much the same, and agreed there was a conflict from Lisa. So maybe that's really helpful. I'm going to talk a little bit about performance, and maybe we'll come back to these at the end of this little slot. So go back to here, share. Right, can everybody see again? So here we go. So one of the things I wanted to talk about actually is first of all, at the organizational level, before we come back down to the individual level. And I've been blessed in my career to work for some purpose-driven organizations. And then later in my career, I've also been blessed to work in some organizations which were less purpose-driven, and had some experiences. One of the experiences I describe as the best, worst experience I've ever had. Working, and actually the reason I describe it as the best experience is it helped me realize that what I sort of took for granted as common sense, be purpose-driven, focus on your customers, engage your people, all of those things, really that's the exception in the corporate world. So I just wanted to share some kind of reflections on, maybe some of the contrast between a purpose-driven business model and the traditional corporate model, which I think actually is still more prevalent. So I would say purpose-driven is more focused on the long term. Every business has got short-term pressures, but when you're driven by purpose, you're focused on achieving some sort of change, making some sort of difference. The other thing is profit is the fuel in a purpose-driven organization. Profit is really important. And I'll share a quote on that. But it's not the end game in a purpose-driven organization. Incredibly important, but not the end game. And I was also observing purpose-driven businesses focused on win-wins, focused on engaging their people, focused on delighting customers. And my experience is it leads to faster and sustained growth, and it leads to higher profits. My experience in the more sort of traditional corporate model is that much more focused on the short term, particularly organizations that are publicly listed with shareholders. They report their performance quarterly, and it's all about the next quarter. Profit is the goal. That's the only goal. And actually, my experience in the traditional corporate world is that often business is seen as a zero-sum game. So you win at the expense of others. So it might be that you win at the expense of your customers, or you win at the expense of your competitors, or often you win. Some of the bad practice I've seen in corporate environments is you win at the expense of your people. Let's not give them pay rises this year because then we can get a few bits of extra profit. And that leads to disaffected people. It leads to bad services, unhappy customers. And what I saw actually in the couple of examples I worked in more traditional corporate environments, actually, they weren't growing, and they were stuck in a constant cycle of cuts and restructuring and lower profits. So that was kind of my experience from a business perspective, which is why I'm so passionate. Purpose is not only the right thing to do, I just think it makes good business sense. And actually that's backed up by the stats. There's various different reports. This stat here, which I think comes from an Ernst & Young study, companies with a clear purpose outperform the market by 42%. Those with a clear purpose, those with a purpose statement, but where really the purpose statement is words on the wall, they kind of perform average. And those who've got, no purpose at all, are 42% lower. So nice kind of synergy and synchronicity there. This is a brilliant quote that I think kind of cuts right to the heart of the matter. So Peter Drucker is the kind of management thinker who's very famous for saying culture eats strategy for breakfast. This quote of his is less well known. I've only come across it very recently, but I love it because I think it really cuts to the market to it. So profit for a company is like oxygen for a person. If you don't have enough of it, you're out of the game. So profit is essential. But if you think life is all about breathing, then you're really missing something. To me, that really captures the the difference between whether business should have purpose or not. And I'm going to check the chat because I saw something.
Yeah, we've had an interesting question, Chris, from Greg, who says, is
Yes.
a purpose statement the same as a mission statement?
Short answer, no. So obviously you have vision and mission, and you know, they're often aligned, and some organizations won't have a purpose, but they'll have a vision and a mission statement. So vision is about something, is a place that you want to get to, kind of a destination. I would say mission is about how you do it, but purpose is about why you do it and a change that you want to see happen in the world. And so I would always come back to, and I'm a bit of a purpose purist, because you hear about purpose in business a lot, and often purpose will be used interchangeably with kind of social impact or environmental impact or this diversity and inclusion. And there's a strong overlap, but actually for me, purpose, I just go back to dictionary definition, which is the reason for something to exist. And so, you know, I don't think you have to want to save the world to be a purpose-driven organization. You know, you could make nails that hammer things into walls, but be purpose-driven. If you're really clear, why does this business exist? Well, it's not to make money. Actually, we make nails, and those nails, they're the best nails in the world. And actually, you know, we want our nails to be the prettiest nails, or whatever it is. You know, it doesn't have to be about saving the world, but it does need to be a clear reason for existence. And that needs to relate to how you serve your customers and how your products and services are used in the world. So, you know, purpose, a good way to think about purpose. And there's a great story. So JFK, US president, went to a NASA facility, I think it was in the 60s, and he was doing a televised, he was getting ready for a televised address to the nation. And he was in a back room somewhere, and he met somebody, and he said, hello, nice to meet you, I'm Jack Kennedy. Like, you know, what do you do here? And the guy said, Mr. President, I'm helping put man on the moon. And the guy was the janitor, the caretaker. And so Jack Kennedy then tells this story on TV. And it's you know, it's one of the stories you hear often to really understand, like, when purpose is really true in an organization, it matters to everybody. So, you know, when I talk about purpose at an organizational level, I would say purpose provides three things that are really useful. So first of all, it provides clarity. Why do we exist? Purpose becomes the North Star for an organization. Purpose also creates alignment, so that actually, and I see this, I work with lots of businesses, I work with lots of leadership teams, and most businesses are misaligned. And when I say misaligned, what I mean is full of infighting, full of conflicts, full of targets that actually rub up against each other. But in a purpose-driven business, actually, when it works really well, purpose then works to align people, align teams, align departments, align targets. And you can, as I put here, it could be a glue that combines culture, talent, and company goals into a powerful force. The other thing that purpose does is it engages people. So internally, and I experienced this at Ingeus, you know, it was like a cult. You know, we were all so driven by the purpose. We loved it. We're massively engaged, and because we're massively engaged, we all worked really hard. We're really passionate about what we did, and that's why we grew. But also, you know, when you see this with businesses that are consumer brands or business-to-business brands, purpose really engages customers as well. So purpose creates clarity, alignment, and engagement, and that's why it works. So yeah, so clarity of goals, clarity about your customers, clarity about how you improve their lives, clarity for your strategy, clarity about your brand, clarity of the role people play in the company, and clarity of the role of the company in society. You know, alignment, and the image behind here is of people rowing together. Alignment, if you imagine everybody rowing in harmony toward the same destination, that is alignment. And again, purpose, when you really get purpose in an organization, it really helps to create that alignment. And that, as I said, it's about working together. It's about reducing infighting and politics, getting rid of the friction and the energy, the wasted energy of internal conflicts and politics. And then you can tell I did this slide deck last summer. So this was, I think, the semi-final of the Euros. Not really related to purpose, but it was about passion. You know, purpose harnesses passion, and, you know, engaged people do better work. You know, it's pretty simple. It's not rocket science, and yet so many organizations get it wrong. You know, it is rocket fuel for performance, and if you recruit people that align with the purpose, they'll be motivated to do the best work. And I think in the sector that you work in employability, you make a positive impact on society, you do good work. And so actually it's not always possible to be completely aligned with the purpose, but I think it's more possible in the sector that you work in. And I've also talked about engagement with customers. So, yeah, at an individual level, then at a company level, that's how purpose, in my experience, can drive organizations to become better organizations that perform and grow. Now, I want to take it down now to sort of personal purpose and work. I did this post on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, and that I did the photo, life is too short to do work that makes you miserable. And what was quite interesting, so some of the people that came back, and you can see some of the comments I've copied here, you know, misery versus misery from unemployment. You know, David Liversidge said, I'll be thankful you've got a job. You know, so am I talking from a position of privilege? It's okay, I've done well. You know, it's okay for me to say life's too short to do a job that you hate. But actually, for some people, that's the only choice that they've got. And so this is going to be the second discussion topic. And that's the topic title, life is too short to do a job that you hate, discuss. And I think for this one, maybe we do 7 minutes, Helen, and what we'll do is we will close the rooms after 7 minutes, and then you can use the full 60 seconds. And then when we come back, we'll come back to some of the questions you asked about purpose, and we'll sort of bring it home as well. So, Helen, you okay to open the rooms?
They're open. Let's get you into a room. Adele, we'll get you into room 5, because it's not put you in a room again.
No worries, thank you.
Just making sure we haven't got anyone else unassigned. So to room 2.
So Marianne saying she has to leave for a bit.
Yeah, that's fine, Marianne.
No problems, Marianne.
Bless, Carl's just still there. I don't know what happened with Carl. I have messaged him.
I'm just going to have a look at the comments. Because actually I come on to trying to contextualize it now in relation to helping job seekers into work, so we can kind of come back to some of these questions.
It's really good. I think Amy's group earlier were trying to check and see if we were eating our lunch while they were all busy working in breakout rooms. I think that's what that was.
I think when it ticks over to 12. So how was your discussion? Can we get thumbs up or good discussion? So I'm going to go back to the slides, and then we'll come back in a minute. So because I had a reflection on this, and as you can see, my response to Leanne, actually I was pretty strong in saying, actually, my personal view, having been an employment advisor, having worked with some of the most disadvantaged people over time, I actually think it's a false dichotomy to say, like, actually, it isn't a choice between doing a job you're miserable or being unemployed. And actually, when we're working with people unemployed, we shouldn't be selling that you just got to take any job. That's my sort of view. You may well have to take a job that you don't want to do for a little while to move on. But for me, a big thing that we should be doing is pushing, work needs to bring stuff, and you don't have to do a job that you love, but don't do a job that hates you miserable. There's always another job somewhere else, and so you can always get a job. So I actually think, and I wanted to sort of try and connect this up, I think at the individual level, purpose is like a good employment consultant. And the reason I say that is, if you're in a job that makes you miserable, you're stuck, because you don't think there's an option. And that is so similar to what I think is the fundamental root of the clients that you work with every day, is they get stuck in a position. They get stuck and they get used to being there and not thinking that there's an option. And what a great employment consultant or employment advisor or whatever job title is in vogue in the sector at the moment is, you help your customers, you help your clients, you help your job seekers become unstuck. And so I actually see a real parallel between people who get stuck in a job they hate and people who get stuck in unemployment. And actually having a focus on doing something that has purpose, that has meaning, for me, that makes you happy and useful, is a good means of helping you become unstuck. And I just wanted to introduce this. Some of you may have seen this, but there's a model called Ikigai. And I think, you know, this is useful for you to use individually, but I also think it could be quite useful to use with your clients. The origin of Ikigai, so Ikigai is a Japanese word, which kind of means your reason for being. This diagram actually isn't, there's a book about Ikigai. This diagram isn't from that book. Somebody's done this diagram and used it to describe Ikigai. But essentially what it says is there's 4 things to think about. What do you love doing? What are you good at? What can you be paid for? And what does the world need? And actually, if you manage to find a job in the center of all of those 4 circles, so it's something that you're good at, it's something you get paid for, it's something the world needs, and it's something that you love, that's Ikigai, and that is nirvana when it comes to work. But what's, I really like, and we can share these slides afterwards, what's really nice about the Ikigai thing is it kind of says, well, if you end up in a job that is something you can get paid for and it's something that you get good at, then this is a profession. You might not really be serving the world, and you might not be doing something that you love. So it's a profession. But if you do something that you get paid for and it's something the world needs, that could be a vocation. So, kind of think like maybe nursing, teaching, that type of stuff. If you do something you love and it's something the world needs, but maybe you don't get paid very well, or maybe you're not that great at it, that's more about a mission. And if you're fortunate to do something you love and that you're good at, then that's a passion, but you might not get paid that well for it. And it might not be, so it might be musicians or whatever it might be. So really interesting diagram and just 4 interesting questions. And, for you personally, as you think about your careers as you go forward, but also with job seekers, I actually think these are 4 useful questions to ask. What is it that you love? What are you good at? What's out there in the labor market that's going to pay you what you want to get paid? And what does the world need? So I'm not going to do the final bit of career progression because I've gone far too slow and talked too much. But what I'm going to do is go back to the chat and let's kind of go back to the performance questions first, and also just drop any more chat, any questions that you've got now. Let's drop them into chat. So let's kind of work through. So Emma discussed conflict between performance expectations and purpose. And this is the perennial, as long as when I was an employment advisor, when I was a BM, when I was a regional manager, this is always a topic for discussion, right? Are targets compatible with our purpose? Are targets compatible with helping people? And I would say, actually, when we do it right, yes. Because what is the purpose of employment services? It's helping people get sustained jobs. And what are your targets? Your targets typically, and I don't know all of your organization's targets, so forgive me if I get this wrong, but actually your fundamental targets are about getting people sustained jobs. However, it can feel like there's a conflict when you feel like, well, actually, I've just got to get somebody any job to hit my targets. And actually, so for me, purpose is absolutely aligned with performance, but then it's about the quality and not compromising the quality. And that comes down to leadership and management. And it also comes down to you, which is understanding that, you know, don't just get anybody a job, don't force people into a job. But actually, if we're not getting people jobs, then we're at the heart of it. That's fundamentally, if your job is employment advisor, you're not a psychologist, you're not a psychiatrist, you're not a counsellor, you're not a social worker. Fundamentally, you help people by helping them into sustained work. So done right, there isn't a conflict. I understand, but often it feels like it can, particularly when you're 2 weeks into the month and you've less than 50% of your target, and then people start to say, well, what are you going to do? So there is that kind of tension that can emerge. Nigel's question, how do you consider performance? Is it the manner or the outcome? It's both, I would say. Quality outcomes. Ultimately, it's the outcome, but you shouldn't compromise how you get the outcome. You shouldn't do things which are unethical. You shouldn't force people into bad jobs. And if you feel that that's where you're at, then I would say don't compromise. Be really focused, but at the same time, be realistic with yourselves that that's your measure. That is performance. Is about impacting the purpose and doing what we're here to do, which is help our job seekers. Lainey says, felt how performance is measured mattered. Absolutely. Great comment from Carolyn about aligning individual purpose. Lisa, same, agreed there was a conflict. We answered about mission statement. Marcus said employment advisors work with all like families. Let's carry on. So Tracy, new to employability, was in a job. Hate is too strong a word. After many years with no promotion prospects, wasn't being challenged, didn't feel motivated, didn't get out and never would. So that's well done, Tracy, on that. And I'd made that comment about being stuck. And it kind of feels to me a little bit like you felt like you were almost going to be stuck in that sticky mud if you didn't get stuck. So Carolyn's got a link there to career guidance. Kerry said they shared experience of feeling liberated, taking a leap of faith. Nigel says any job is very much a mantra from JCP in my experience. I feel this can be counterproductive. And Shannon agrees, and I agree with that. And actually, I saw a massive change happen in JCP and the world of benefits and conditionality through the sort of the noughties. So pre-2010, 2011, there wasn't a real drive from JCP to put people into any job. People weren't getting sanctioned left, right, and centre for not turning up to appointments. And in the noughties and in the work program days, this might predate most of you in the sector, it went to quite an extreme where that was, JCP were basically saying take any job and actually backing it up with sanctions, etc., which for me doesn't sit right. It doesn't help people into sustainable jobs. But that was the way they interpreted the rules. I was always clear when I led MAXIMUS and led teams in Ingeus, we don't do that. It isn't about any job. It is about getting a job, and people do have, responsibilities because they're on benefits. However, we work with people to get them the right job. But I know that is a real tension day to day working with Job Centre Plus. I don't necessarily have a solution to that, other than saying, well, that's what they push. You don't have to push that. When you're working with your clients, now that doesn't stop it when they go to the job centre. That Job Centre Plus advisor may say, here's a job, and if you don't take it, we're going to sanction you. That's a really tough one. But do what's under your power, so when they're with you, you help them find the right jobs. So I think, and Joshua makes a great observation here. If you get everyone a job, you don't have one. Surely this philosophy has to be acknowledged and accounted for in the organisation's purpose. 100%. And this, I remember back in the very early days at Ingeus. Back then, on good programs, you'd get about 45% of people into work. no program gets 100% of people into work, particularly if you're working with long-term unemployed, working with people with disabilities. So, it would be great if we got 100% of people into work. I think the reality is working with highly disadvantaged people, then it's about shifting the dial from, say, 40% to 50, then 60, then 70. But there's always going to be people that need more work. And the deeper you dig, the harder that work is going to be. So I, for one, would love to see a day when we get 100% of people into work. Sadly, I don't think we'll ever get there. But yeah, it is one of those things. And the other thing is it's cyclical. It's not just about what you do, it's also about what happens in the labour market. And so sometimes there are more jobs and sometimes there are less jobs, and that will lead to expansions and contractions in this sector overall. So that is one of the realities of the sector, and I've sort of seen that sort of cycle go up and down a little bit. So I'd just like to thank everybody for coming along today. Hopefully it provided a few bits of food for thought. And I would go back, where did I start? When I got interviewed for that job as an employment advisor, they said to me, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? I said, I want to be happy and useful. Not the answer they expected, but they did still give me the job. I think that's one, find your own mantra. But I would say, what you do with your job seekers, what you do with your clients, like, you get to really be a role model and an exemplar about work being a positive thing. And so, you're really, it's a hard job that you do, but it's a great job, possibly the favorite job I've ever done. And so, I would encourage you to be great exemplars to your job seekers, and not to, just because Job Centre Plus want to push anybody into any job, you don't have to do that. Try and find the right jobs for your job seekers.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chris. We've got lots of people saying thank you and for a really thought-provoking and interesting session. I won't read them all out because it will take us another 10 minutes to read those. So thank you. That's been really, really good. I know it's going to be a mantra for us. I think everyone now, we're going to get lots of reports of people in interviews saying, I want to be happy and useful, because we're all taking that one. Yes, it's just going to go viral. And what a wonderful thing for it to do. So thank you very much. And because you didn't finish that session, I'm going to put you on the spot while there's people here. Maybe we can have you back to finish the section on career progression that you didn't manage to do today at some point.
Yeah, I'd be happy to come back at some point in the future.
Thank you very much. So wonderful. Thank you for that. I won't pin you down for a day. I'm not going to be that pushy, but yes, everybody, he has said yes, he'll come back. So thank you for that. And thank you everyone for spending your lunch with us. I always say it is a privilege to have you all here with us. Thank you very much. It was our 103rd Live Learn Lunch today. I still can't get my head around the fact we've done so many, and they're always interested and engaging. Next week, if you can join us, I have popped it in the chat for you, so you can just click on the link and register right now. We've got the Good Employability Company joining us again. Those who come regularly will know David, and he's great. And we're going to be looking at people versus the machine, or digging deep into essentialism, chat box, machine learning and artificial intelligence. I won't read you the whole thing, but knowing David, he will have done his research. He will have all sorts of interesting examples for us. So do come along and find out what's going on in the world of AI and employability. If you can't, we will be sharing the recording. We will be sharing the recording of this later. And again, I put the link in the chat for those of you who would like to rewatch this session. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, everyone else. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. And connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to connect. It'd be great to be connected.
Excellent.